Welcome to session 5. I'm actually speaking to you from my yurt, which is located up in the mountains above the town of Sonora. So I don't really have a lot to say for you about this particular session. We're looking at a really good classic example of narrative argument, which is Brent Staples' Just Walk On By. And obviously, we're gearing up to get you launched into your narrative argument. And of course, the great fun of doing a narrative argument is the writing of it, the chance to take your experience and craft it into something engaging and interesting, both for yourself and for your reader. So I have only one tidbit to offer you for this session, and that is to talk about how what you are going to be writing for your narrative argument is going to lay the foundation for your evaluation argument and then your proposal argument. And to do that, I want to use the example of what I read for you in my last orientation video, which was my experience of facing down the possibility of really getting stoned, literally, by an angry crowd of people in Morocco because I transgressed upon their sacred site. Now, that social issue that I was banging up against, almost literally, down there in Morocco is a very old one. And it can be traced all the way back to the Crusades in the 11 and 1200s, when Europeans invaded the territory of the Islamic world, and with a kind of trauma and bloodshed which easily parallels our own experience of 9/11, left very deep marks upon the psyche, the collective psyche and memory of the Islamic world. The Crusades were essentially invasions, and they are remembered. And so when we hit this deep archaeological stratum of the wounds and the hates and the distrust that has developed between cultures over the centuries, we're getting into some very interesting territory, which is very relevant for our world now. If I were to develop upon this original narrative argument that I read you, which described my near brush with stoning and my moment of understanding, my realization that, my God, I have now experienced in my body, in my mind, in my psyche, what these hates between these two monotheistic cultures look like. Wonderful narrative argument, right? Now, to move on into the evaluation argument, I would conduct a lot of historical research. I would work to find out how did we get to this place, and I would end up following that formula that I give you of creating a thesis statement and evaluate the situation. Valuable work. Very few people sit down and actually attempt to evaluate what is going on between Islamic and modern atheistic Christian Western culture. The proposal essay could get really interesting for me if I were to write it, because I wandered around not only Morocco, but also Europe for some time. And that included doing a medieval pilgrimage route called the Camino to Santiago. I actually walked 250 miles of it as a pilgrim. It's one of the greatest experiences of my life. Now, the Camino de Santiago is very interesting because it was done by millions of Europeans over a 600-year period, probably. And it's a pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela, where there is a cathedral. And that cathedral is built around what is said to be the body of the Apostle St. James, who had, through a miraculous series of events, ended up in Spain and had been buried there and rediscovered by a hermit who had followed a particular auspicious star and come upon his tomb right at the point when a saint, an apostle, was needed to rally the troops for the Reconquista, the conquering of Spain and retaking it from the Moors. Pretty soon visions were cropping up where Santiago, St. James, was seen riding into battle on a war horse, carrying a banner and slaying the followers of Islam, trampling them under the hooves of his steed, running them down with his spear, hacking off their limbs with his sword. You're getting the picture, right? So essentially, Santiago became the symbol for the Reconquista of Spain, and Santiago continued into the New World as Santiago Mata Indios, Santiago the killer of Indians. Whereas in Spain, he was called Santiago Matamoros, Santiago killer of Moors. You get the picture? We're steeped in violence. It's written deep into our religious iconography. No wonder we're having a hard time having peace in the world. So, all that said, my proposal for my argument essay, if I were to begin with my experience there in the Draw Valley, my close brush to death, would be, let's transform Santiago Matamoros into Santiago Amamoros, lover of Moors. Let us transform the entire pilgrimage route into an expression of brother and sisterhood between the Islamic and Christian world, and invite people, pilgrims from the Islamic world, to come and join us on pilgrimage to the saint. Now, the amazing thing about the Camino de Santiago is very few actual devoted Catholics now do it. They are on it. But there are people coming from all around the world to do it. And many of them are atheists or Buddhists or you name it. But the one thing I didn't find on the pilgrimage were followers of Islam. None. So, my proposal would be, let us transform Santiago Matamoros and his image of riding down Moors and trampling them underfoot to a saint that walks with a follower of Islam on one arm and a follower of Christianity on the other. Okay, see how that happened? I'm going to provide a link for the article that I wrote long ago on my pilgrimage. Part of it got published in the Sacramento Bee on Easter in their travel section as the main article, which was very cool. It was one of my first breakthroughs as a writer. So if you want to read it, you can. And that's it. I think that's the orientation that I wanted to give you for this session. I hope you enjoy your writing.